you broke this news to me. It wasn't Twitter, it wasn't Instagram, it was you. Quentin Tarantino announced his last film, his final film.
Well, I don't think he announced it. I think it's leaking.
Oh yeah, you said it was a leak again, and he hates leaks.
Yeah.
Didn't he have to jump ahead the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because of the leak?
No, I think that was Hateful Eight. So I don't know how leaks work, if this is one of those strategic leaks where your agent leaks it or whatever. But yeah, it leaked out that his final script is ready to go. And I think he's taken bids on it.
So it's not going to be with Sony?
I think he has a contract with Sony, but he doesn't necessarily have to do it with them.
Really?
Yeah. And it's apparently the premise is about a 1970s film critic.
Yeah, and if you listen...
It's called The Movie Critic.
It's literally called... And I saw somebody who's like, you better put in the John Lovett's
John
the critic.
Lovett's The Critic.
Yeah.
It stinks.
Possibly loosely based or actually based on movie critic Pauline Kael.
Is that his top critic, or is that
I think that's one of his favorite critics from the 70s. She's pretty big.
Yeah.
Dude,
he really liked her.
So yeah, that information's out there, and I feel like this is a leak that's put out by his PR company to get bids on it. It's like, okay, who's going to pay me to make this movie?
Yeah.
Because he's also doing a show at the same time, it seems like.
Is there going to be a show?
He wrote a he announced it on.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
He also wrote a show.
And that's, he only said 10 films, but he didn't say how many shows he can do.
It's exactly right.
So it's he'll be doing some other stuff. I mean, you guys listen to the Video Archives podcast, and you knew how much of a fan he was for films and watching films. I did not know how much of a fan he was for going back to and referencing and remembering film critics, articles about some of his favorite films, to the point where he's imitating their voices. And I was like, that was before the internet. Like, how does he know what they sound like? But then it sounds like he has personal relationships with them after the fact.
Well, you got to consider there was a time when you couldn't just get on the internet and say what you thought about a movie.
No.
And then it just lived there forever. You had to actually be a writer for some sort of periodical, and they'd post your reviews, And
yeah.
People who were wanting to, talk about movies, that was one of their only outlets, was reading reviews.
Yeah.
But now any of us can just yell at our phones, and we're movie critics.
And we often do.
Yeah.
But I enjoy when they actually read some of their the film reviews, because we know as times changed, our feelings towards films changed, and some of them age better, some of them age worse. So, but whatever studio needs to pay a lot of money for this, but he almost made it seem like that Once Upon a Time was the main event, and this is going to be like his riding off into the sunset, a little bit cool. Like, it's going to be a little bit more subdued and cooled down. Have you heard that?
Yeah. It's like the epilogue.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the epilogue. Does that make you nervous? Although his epilogues are great too, so I don't see that there's going to be any problems.
I think it's going to be great, man. I think he understands exactly what his place in the world is. He always says, and we all know this, every director, they get old and they get out of touch, and their last 5 movies suck. And he wants to get out before he gets to that point. So I think this will probably be like his most divisive movie, maybe. This is the chance to be divisive and go out on it's like the ending of The Sopranos when it just goes dark.
Right.
He can do whatever he wants stylistically and just see how it goes, because he's already so over.
Yeah, when he was on Joe Rogan, he was talking about that. But he's one of the few directors that seems to be getting better. Not that he was ever bad, but he's just getting better and better. And it's just because he loves making movies. Like he says after every one of his shots, when he does that extra take, because he loves making movies. And the homages, they've never, to me, detracted from the film experience. I mean, it just goes to show how much of a fan he really is. So I'm really curious where he's going to go with this. But we did a video on this, and apparently we were wrong. I don't think any of us had any guesses that it was going to be about a film critic. What is?
It should have been closer, though. I mean, he's doing nothing but talking about movies at this stage in his career.
Oh, yeah. What a
last movie was about movies. His next movie is about movies.
His podcast is about movies, and
yeah,
that's why he got famous. He was the video store clerk who became a director. I mean, that's his whole gimmick.
Yeah, he's never changed everything. He's talking about movies his entire life, and then he just keeps going.
I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was my favorite of any of his work. And part of the reason for that for me is that I feel like in a lot of his earlier stuff, you feel him trying. He's on some level trying to prove himself and show that he can use these tools to craft really great stories. But he's at a point in his career now where he's like, I've proven that I can do all this shit. I don't need to try to do anything for any of you fuckers.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna go make something. That's
and he can just make a 3-hour movie about two pals hanging out
Totally.
and turn it into just like a genius piece of cinema. It's so good. I never get tired of watching that movie. Every time it's on, I have stars just because they play it on the regular. It's definitely his best movie, and you're right.
So
Everything
good.
before that, especially all the way up to the Hateful Eight, where they were screaming at the top of their lungs, feels like trying. And now it's just like he's at the top of his game, master of his craft. He can just make a movie about going to the movies and hanging out. Amazing, and still swerve us.
Yeah.
Still swerve us. I don't know how you were feeling halfway through Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because we all knew what was coming. We all knew there was going to be some kind of confrontation at the end, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, what's it going to be? How is this going to intersect with the murders? And I thought for a second there, and this would have been maybe Quentin Tarantino years ago, it was going to be, for some reason Bruce Lee is there, and Bruce Lee is going to help divert these murders. I thought that's what was coming. I was like, we're going to have a kung fu, Bruce Lee versus the Manson family kung fu thing at the end. And it would have been great. It would have been awesome. But no, it was more subdued, but at the same time, lady still got flamethrowed.
Book that crossover comic, and I will buy it in a second.
Bruce Lee versus the Manson family. Three comic book series.